I had this interaction on Twitter today, and because I'm not just an infamous troll of powerful and influential assholes, see the way that I got blocked by Meghan McCain, I'm also a public educator. I wanted to break down for people why I chose to respond the way that I did and what my goals are when I respond like this. And in doing so, teaching you how you can determine when and whether to respond to an idea or a person with good faith engagement or mockery. I know that what I'm about to do is a little bit taboo because when you show how the sausage is made, it doesn't always necessarily make the joke less funny, but it can just be uncomfortable. You know, we want those things to just go without saying. But much like with consent, if you're never explicit and direct about it, especially when you're just learning about it, then you can never master it. And we want people to be able to master the skills of engaging with people online because we spend so much time doing it, and I would rather that people do it effectively than just waste their time. I already made a TikTok about what happened, so I'm just gonna include that here so that you get the gist of it. Man, why are British imperialists so thin-skinned? It was brought to my attention that this Crypt Keeper looking motherfucker is trying to claim that Africa needed the British. So I, being a courteous person, informed him that his doctor was trying to get a hold of him to tell him to stop shitting his pants over and over. And he had the audacity to just immediately block me. This is what I get for trying to start a civil dialogue. I'm trying to help you, Godfrey. So you see a shitty, stupid take online. What do? So there are several options. You can ignore it, which is a lot of the time a good choice. If the person has like less than, 400 followers, definitely choose this route. But if the person has any kind of like reach or influence, if they're a journalist or a politician or even just somebody who has a lot of followers, what are your options? You can engage with them in good faith. You can, argue with them and meet them with facts to counter whatever bullshit they're spouting. You can make fun of them, which is always fun. You can use it as a learning opportunity to show other people. So instead of engaging with the person directly, quote tweet it or stitch it on or whatever on TikTok and just talk about the ways that they're wrong. That's often a really good approach. But how do you determine whether or not to, which tactic to use? In this particular case, I determined that this person is not going to hear me or listen to me because they're an old British man who thinks that Africa needs England. Like they're far gone. They're not going to listen to reason. I could easily have chosen to turn this into an educational opportunity, which is always great. But the times when humor is effective are when the person themselves, or more likely the idea, is just so nonsensical and stupid that meeting the statement where it's at seems to give some legitimacy to it. And obviously if you're like writing academic papers or writing an essay or like you're a more serious person than I am, then those ideas do need to be countered. However, there's a lot of power in humor, and to just make fun of a person, to say you are so ridiculous, so absurdly racist and just such an awful person that I'm not even going to take your ideas seriously, can really be effective to take the power away from this person. So, and James C. Scott actually talks about this in the book Hidden Transcripts, which is about the ways that, specifically in his work, peasant farmers, but anybody who's in a situation of like an extreme power imbalance, the things that people do to even out that power imbalance. And humor has always been used as a really powerful tool to that extent, to say, I'm not only not afraid of you, I'm just openly going to mock you.
Ah! Yes! 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 Now the whole world's gonna know that you died scratching my balls. To the right! To the right! To the right! You are a funny man, Mr. Bond.
It's kind of hard for people to maintain the facade of dignity and respect and power and importance that they rely on to make people take them seriously when people are just making fun of them and telling them that they shit their pants all the time. So that's why I chose to go this route. I do think that it's important to talk about the fact that, certain people do this better or worse. I love doing it, but I can't do it that often because my work, I take my work pretty seriously when I'm talking about drug policy and abolition and all that kind of thing. I do need to project mostly an air of authority and knowing what I'm talking about, because the stuff that I'm talking about is based in like research and evidence, and I want people to take me seriously and hear that I'm not just an internet troll. However, the reason that I still inject this kind of humor into my stuff is actually very conscious and done on purpose. Number one, if I only talk about the problems, people won't really listen. Like, there's lots of problems. The world is pretty fucked up, and everybody knows that. And if something is acutely really wrong and shitty, you can just talk about how bad it is and ask people to look at it. But I did that when my friend Dan went to prison, and I was like sharing his story with people and interviewed him for my podcast. It was hard for me to make any jokes about that because it was really fucked up. It was close to me, and it was, yeah, like he went to prison for cannabis. I'll put a link to the podcast episode where I interview him in the description. But I couldn't really joke about that. And there's obviously lots of subjects that, subjects themselves that shouldn't be joked about. But people get burnt out. You can't just give people depressing stuff and, oh my God, the world is on fire and this and that. And, like, all of that stuff is true, but people care and they're struggling, but like that can't be the only thing that we're talking about. And the only sort of messages that we're sending on the left is like freaking out about the problems. It doesn't mean that we're taking the problems less seriously when we are mocking our enemies or making jokes about them. In fact, anybody who spent any amount of time in spaces of actual like on the ground organizing with, the most marginalized people know that humor is a really important part of it because it keeps us from going crazy. It's a way to deal with the circumstances and to bond and to offer ourselves a little relief from the tension. Now, you don't want to go so far into it that it's like, I think there's two ways in which you can go too far with the use of humor in these kind of situations. One is when you're on the sort of like liberal centrism side and that whole like Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, that kind of stuff. Even though I love that stuff personally as a recovering liberal from my very early years, there's still a sense of satisfaction that you get from a good like takedown of somebody's hypocrisy. But the problem is that when that's the only kind of access to humor that like large audiences have, and they're just getting the release of tension without any of the sort of movement building that the left is trying to do, then all they get to do is like laugh and mock the hypocrisy and the absurdity of right-wing thoughts and concepts without and just kind of like it just ending there and just being like, okay, well, we're gonna make fun of this stuff and it's really funny, and we'll just laugh at it and then go about our daily lives, go back to brunch. That diffusion of tension that comedy can provide can be dangerous when the group themselves is like privileged enough that they can kind of just like ignore the actual structural issues, especially the ones that implicate them in having to change and fix it. The other risk on the flip side, on the more far left side to the use of comedy or the over-reliance on comedy and mockery as a form of sort of like, protest or bringing us together, is that when it's all you do, and you never take anything seriously, then you risk kind of losing the plot. So there are accounts on Twitter and like people who do political comedy, podcasts like Chapo Trap House, who I love Chapo Trap House. I know that they're problematic in some ways, but like they were really formative to my early movement from sort of like left liberal to like full anarcho-communist. And I will always be grateful to them for that. And a big part of the reason that they were so influential on me, as opposed to like reading Marx and things like that, was because they used humor. So I am so grateful to them for teaching me the power of humor and mockery. Because also when you're getting your political education in a way that's like feels kind of good to hear about because it's like cathartic and funny and all that kind of thing. It's just more enjoyable. It's more pleasurable, which is something that I think that we need and is valuable. That said, if it's the only approach that you ever have, you run the risk of what I'm going to call the South Parkification of politics, where if humor becomes the only goal and everyone's kind of fair game, then what do you even stand for anymore? And this, I've seen this happen on some people on the left on Twitter and stuff, where it's like you get so deep into just going back into humor as a self-protective mode, because it is also very self-protective. Like it's really painful to think about all the bad and shitty things all the time. So being able to make fun of it kind of like can make you feel better, which is fine and good and important. We have that a lot with Trump. Like Trump is this horrible, horrible person, but he's also really funny, and it was like fun and kind of a relief to be able to mock him. But you know, South Park, they skewer everybody, and if everyone is fair game, then what the fuck do you even stand for? And so I've seen this happen sometimes where if the goal is always just to dunk, it's always just to get humor, it's always just to mock, then you can sort of lose sight of like your actual ideology, which is that like you're supposed to be punching up, you're supposed to understand who is worthy of mockery and who is just not worth it to make fun of. Not that you can't make fun of them, and that's the whole point of like the problem with, you know, rich famous comedians going after trans people. It's not that like you can't ever mock the concept of being transgender. ContraPoints talks about this, that like if you actually have transgender friends, like they're very funny and they will make fun of themselves and make jokes like all the time. It's just that if you are a powerful person doing it to a group of not powerful people, it's or a person outside of that community who doesn't really have a full understanding of the experiences of those people and what is actually funny versus not, then it's going to come across badly. So if you're the type of person who often uses mockery to sort of dismantle and take down people and their shitty reactionary beliefs, I love that. I think we could use more of it in general. It's more fun when it's targeted well. It's super effective. I just want people to remember that if it's the only thing that you ever do, then it will potentially start to be unclear whether or not your goal is like actually, you know, helping leftist movements in some sort of way, or if it's just like nihilism and mockery. Because if you're never able to take anything seriously, then that's how it's going to come across. And also, when you mostly joke around, the times that you take something seriously and go like, I can't even make jokes about this, it's just really fucked up and I want us to talk about it. Doing that, even if it's just occasional, makes those moments even more powerful. And one last danger that can come from, you know, leaning too much into the humor aspect is if you find yourself so irony poisoned that you're unable to just be earnest. If everything's a joke all the time and it's all self-protective and like you can't take anything seriously ever, you know, the goal should be to not take seriously people whose ideas are not worth taking seriously. But if you can't take anything seriously ever, then you're not going to be able to do the other things and make the other connections that will make this kind of stuff sustainable and feel good, which is be earnest sometimes. And then you're going to get into like, you know, any kind of earnestness is cringe, and people who are genuinely trying are all stupid losers or whatever. It's safer to just live as the joker who is mocking everything than to do that sometimes, but then also like try to have real conversations and real discussions and make real connections. That stuff requires vulnerability. It requires a level of vulnerability that just being, you know, a jokester doesn't require, but it's also necessary in order to, you know, heal our mental health from all the trauma that is like holding us back from making real connections with each other in the work and, you know, pursuing the actual structural change goals that we have as leftists. I've been wanting to talk about the subject for a while, and I am not ready. I don't have time yet to do scripted videos, so I'm just, just kind of shooting the shit with you. Hope this was interesting and enlightening in some way. Support me on Patreon to enable my work and see more of my stuff. I have like writing and other videos on there. And if you are interested in, this is totally unrelated, but if you know my work in general and know that I work on drug policy stuff and psychedelics, and you're interested in a consultation for the use of psychedelics and how to most beneficially use those in your life for whatever goals you're interested in using psychedelics for, if you just are interested in that but like are kind of don't know where to start and are a little bit nervous, I offer psychedelic consultation services and curation services. And it's actually, when I started offering these, I didn't think it was really gonna go anywhere, but like I've had a lot of clients and it's been really rewarding and really fun work to do. I love seeing people try to make their lives better and care about themselves enough to want that in their life. So it's been super rewarding, and it's also really helpful as a stream of income to support my activist work and my research. So check that out if you're interested. Like and subscribe. Do it now.